Way back in Index Entry 6, I took a look at the very first Tekken. It was a massively important piece of PlayStation history, but sitting down to actually play it was a rough experience. It felt like watching two refrigerators fighting in moon gravity. The movements were clunky, the floaty jumps took 3 business days to land, and the whole thing felt like a rough draft for a much better game. So going into Index Entry 76, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. Sequels in the 90s could be a coin toss. Sometimes they completely revolutionised the franchise, and sometimes they just slapped a new coat of paint on the same exact jank. But the absolute second you boot up Tekken 2, you realise this isn't just a fresh coat of paint. You are immediately hit with one of the most iconic FMV intros across the entire 32-bit era. You get Heihachi Mishima climbing up a sheer cliff face, and you get Kazuya's devil smile in the lightning, and an absolute thumper of an electronic soundtrack perfectly synced into the action. It completely sets the tone before you even press the start button. It doesn't feel like a clunky arcade port anymore, it feels like an event. I remember watching the exact intro playing on a loop on a demo kiosk in a store and just staring at it. It was the moment Namco figured out exactly what their flagship fighting game was supposed to be. Let's step back into the King of Iron Fist tournament and see if the actual gameplay matches the hype of the opening movie. Welcome to the PSX Index, I'm Parasan, and this is the show where I play and document all 1278 PS1 games released across Northern America, and this episode is Index Entry 76. It hit the shelves in 1996, and it was a massive flex for Sony. Up until this point, the Sega Saturn has a really strong claim on being the ultimate console for arcade fighting games, but Tekken 2 shifted that balance of power almost overnight. This wasn't just a good port, it actually had more content than the arcade cabinet it was based on. It proved that you didn't need to leave your house and pump quarters into a machine to get the premium fighting experience. Documenting this game is a lot of fun because it represents a massive mechanical turning point. We are leaving the absolute misery of Rapture Farms from our last episode and stepping into a brightly lit arena where the only thing you have to worry about is a guy in a leopard mask trying to break your spine. The 3D fighting genre was still relatively new, and developers were still figuring out how to make characters move in 3-dimensional space without looking like cheap action figures. Tekken 2 was the game that smoothed out the rough edges, the frame rate was locked in, the lighting was better, and the character models actually looked like they belonged in the same universe. It's a foundational piece of the PlayStation library, so let's pick a fighter and see how many times I can get juggled in the corner. If you strip away the mechanics, the true identity of the Tekken franchise is its absolute tonal whiplash. On the surface, it presents itself as an incredibly serious, high-stakes martial arts deathmatch. You have guys like Kazuya and Paul Phoenix showing up with perfectly gelled hair, looking like they are ready to fight to death for family honour and corporate control. The music is intense, the stages look like dramatic action movie sets, and the announcer has a booming serious arcade voice. And then you scroll past the karate masters of the character select screen and realise you can just play as a velociraptor wearing boxing gloves, or a literal grizzly bear, or a guy wearing a jaguar mask who exclusively communicates in feral growls. It's completely absurd, and the game never once winks at the camera to acknowledge how stupid it is. It plays it totally straight. You will have a hyper-realistic martial arts duel between two assassins, and the very next match, you will be trying to roundhouse kick a wooden training dummy that has magically come to life. This is what makes the roster so iconic. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which stops the game from feeling like a sterile sports simulation. In a lot of fighting games, the characters can blend together into a blur of generic karate guys. In Tekken 2, every single fighter has a completely distinct visual identity. Even if you don't know the first thing about fighting game frame data, you immediately know that you want to play as the giant robot named Jack 2. It's that chaotic mix of genuine cool and corporate nonsense that makes this game so easy to pick up and play. One of the best things about firing up a fighting game back in 1996 is the realisation that the character select screen is mostly empty and your credit card isn't going to fix it. There was no season pass, there was no day one DLC to automatically unlock the full roster. If you wanted to play as the sub-bosses, you had to earn them the hard way by sitting down and beating arcade mode with every single character in the base roster. It created this incredibly addictive grind. You'd pick a fighter you absolutely hated playing as, just to suffer through those 8 stages of AI opponents so you could see who the game would reward you with at the end. Beating the game with Yoshimitsu unlocked Kunomitsu, beating it with Nina unlocked Anna. It gave the single player experience an actual sense of purpose. Every time you cleared the ladder, that character select screen got a little bit wider, and that feeling of accomplishment was huge. You were literally building the game as you played it, and because the AI in the later stages of the arcade mode was notoriously cheap, reading your inputs and perfectly countering your sweeps, the milliseconds you pressed the button, unlocking the full 25 character roster was a genuine badge of honour. You didn't just own the complete game, you survived it.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
If you read gaming magazines back in the day, you would think everyone playing Tekken 2 was a technical wizard. They would print these massive full-page spreadsheets detailing exact D-pad inputs and frame-perfect timings for 10-hit combos. You'd sit there, staring at the page, trying to memorise a sequence of buttons like you were studying for a chemistry final. But let's be honest about what playing this game on the couch with your friends actually looked like. It was pure, unadulterated button mashing. The second the announcer said fight, all that technical knowledge went straight out the window. It devolved into 2 people desperately hammering the face buttons as fast as humanly possible, hoping a cool move would actually happen. Tekken 2 is famous for ruining friendships because it's ultimate enabler of the spam strategy. If you figured out how to do Law's backflip kick or King's sweeping low kick, you didn't need a 10-hit combo. You just did the exact same move over and over until the other person threw the controller across the room. There was no online matchmaking to humble you against actual pros. There was just your buddy sitting next to you, loudly complaining that you were cheating because he didn't know how to block low. It was chaotic, loud, and incredibly fun.
You win. Round 1. Fight.
So, does Tekken 2 actually hold up today? Or is it just a nostalgia trip? The truth is, it sits in a very specific, interesting place in PlayStation's history. It acts as the perfect bridge. When you play it now, you can feel that it's miles ahead of the clunky, floaty mess of the first game, but it still hasn't quite reached the absolute liquid perfection of what's coming next. But you can't hold that against it. This game is a masterclass in how to do a sequel right. It took everything that worked in the original, tightened the screws, doubled the roster, and added a layer of polish that made the competition look outdated. It is incredibly snappy, the hits actually feel heavy, and throwing a giant robot across the screen is just as satisfying now as it was 30 years ago. It might not be the absolute pinnacle of the franchise, but it is undeniably the game that made Tekken a household name. It proved the 3D fighting genre was here to stay and secured the PlayStation's reputation as the only console you needed for a Friday night tournament.
Perfect. You win. Round 2.
Closing out Tekken 2 is a reminder of exactly why we all used to crowd around a tiny CRT TV on a Friday night. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's a brilliant piece of fighting game history that proved the PlayStation was the undisputed king of the living room arcade. 76 games down, 1,202 games to go. If you want to see what else is in those first 76 games, everything is sorted into playlists on the channel. Whether you want to see me lose my mind in survival horror, break the math in massive RPGs, or figure out what actually qualifies as a mascot platformer, it's all sitting there waiting to be binged. The goal here is to document the entire PlayStation 1 library, and if I'm being completely honest, it's not algorithm friendly. Things get lost, some games don't matter, it's hard to hold retention for some of the games that just don't have the same stand hold as something like a Resident Evil or a Metal Gear Solid. So please, help the channel, subscribe, watch the playlists, leave likes, leave comments and join along. It keeps the algorithm realising that there's more to the PlayStation than the big hitters. Next time on the PSX Index, we are leaving the martial arts arenas behind and heading back to some very familiar territory. Way back in Index Entry 5, we looked at the game that started it all. Back in Index Entry 56, we survived the sequel. Now it's time to cap off the original Naughty Dog trilogy. Get ready for Index Entry 77, Crash Bandicoot Warped. We are trading our boxing gloves for a fruit bazooka and jumping straight into the time machine. Hit subscribe so you don't miss me accidentally spinning directly into Nitro crates next week. Click a playlist on your screen and keep the retro trip going. I'll see you in the warp room.